Where do we start?
Great question. Well, let's dive in and do a little practice then.
That sounds great.
Does that feel fun and
Absolutely?
exciting?
Now, if somebody's driving in their car listening, should they pull over first?
Yes, I would advise if you're going to tap along with us, and I can give a little bit of background, so don't pull over quite yet. But when we do get to the actual tapping point, you might want to hit pause if you're listening from the car or you're multitasking, so that you can actually carve out a little time and space to do this in a safe, effective way. But I'll give a little bit of context first, so that when we dive in, it makes a little bit more sense. And so I love to frame the conversation around tapping before I explain the points with a few key questions. And I would say maybe 3 questions that come up most often. People ask me this all the time. So in order to be most effective with your tapping, I'd love to share 3 thoughts that really are instrumental in getting the best results. And the first one would be, people say, Stacy, why are you focusing on the quote unquote negative or the bad or the unpleasant sensations? And I kind of teased that already, that we tend to start with things in our body as we're tapping that feel uncomfortable. Maybe there's a pain or a tension or something that we don't quite want to look at. And so people are like, Stacy, I don't want to go there. If I call out all this negative stuff, or if I focus on it, aren't I going to attract more of it? And so I like to dispel that myth right away, because it is a really valid question. And yet in the context of tapping, it's actually the best entry point. It's the portal of saying, what is most uncomfortable right now? How can I bring it from subconscious to conscious, give it a voice, express it to the full, so that I no longer need to let it operate in the background. And things that we're not focusing on, if they're painful or uncomfortable, are often still working under the surface. And by allowing it to come to the surface, we create space for a new truth. And I like to consider it not that we're taking stuff out of ourselves and putting in new stuff, because we're all really amazing human systems. It's simply like maybe cleaning a window, for example, that we're removing the residue by focusing, oh, okay, there is some dirt here. There's some things here that isn't fully serving this whole picture. What happens if I work with that? I express it. Maybe I clean some of it or erase it, or now I can see, oh, there's some light here. I can see what's shining through the window. I can see what's happening on the inside. And that act of seeing ourselves, seeing our true nature, seeing how we're designed to shine in the world, is what then catalyzes our unique understanding of our role and what we need to enter into next. And so that's one question I get a lot, and I wanted to pre-frame our exploration with that. The second question that I get quite often is about the words that we say. And so throughout tapping, I encourage people to speak aloud into their own space. Something really transformative happens when you use your voice and audibly express what you've been keeping inside. And so many people will say, Stacy, I'm not good with words. I don't know what to say. What if I say the wrong thing? And I get it, because if you search online for tapping, especially, you'll come up with oodles and oodles of tapping scripts, or people that go to YouTube and look up tapping. It's like there's this script and this magic formula, and you tap here and you say this, and you need to know what to say. But the refreshing truth is there really isn't a magical formula with these kind of somatic practices. It's not about the right words, and you don't need to be eloquent and articulate or poetic, and you can't really do it wrong. It's really about the emotion and the experience of it. So if all you do is tune into your unique human system, your body, and tune into the emotion that you feel, notice where you feel it, how intense it is, what it's like, and you start tapping, you're going to get some results. In fact, a lot of the work that I do with clients and with many of my groups is some silent tapping for a while. So you can drop out of your head and really get into your body. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice then that compared to some of the scripts or formulas you might get online, my style as a practitioner, and I've cultivated this over years of working with thousands of different people in groups and individually, is a lot more freeform. And it's a lot more fluid. It's allowing you to access your freedom and giving yourself permission to simply notice what comes up. And so I'm going to invite both of you to do that here too. Even if we do a little bit of tapping with words, or I cue some words, allow yourself to notice what's coming up in your unique space. And then one more third question that I get quite often, and I want to toss this out for listeners because it really is very important. People often say, Stacy, what if I have some trauma? Will this process re-trigger it? Is it re-traumatizing? If I focus on something that feels painful or unpleasant, am I going to dig up something scary? And this is a really important question because I do work with trauma in my practice, and making sure that as coaches and practitioners, we're informed about people's past is really significant. And I love to offer people the possibility that we all do have some trauma, and it's not so much about exactly what happened to us, but how our nervous system processed it, what happened inside of us, and was our nervous system able to handle it, or was our nervous system overwhelmed? Often because that event or that experience happened too fast, or it was too much or too soon at a young age. And so if our nervous system is holding on to something that it wasn't able to process, we may experience the residue of that. And that's really what trauma is. And given that all of us have some aspect of it, it doesn't need to be the big T, life-changing, huge, life-shattering traumas. It can be those small traumas, some things we might not be aware of, like the birth traumas or prenatal trauma or attachment trauma at a young age. And I love people to simply be gentle with that, knowing that this process could bring up things. It's like, wow, I didn't know that memory from childhood has actually left me feeling humiliated or unable to speak up or use my voice or stand my ground. Wow, now I can see it. And now I know it's there. And we can develop a very compassionate, understanding way to work with trauma. And when we use somatic tools like tapping, we're telling the body it's safe while we do that. And so it's very different from working with trauma and talking about it. Talking simply tends to reactivate the system and re-trigger. Whereas when we work with these traumas, whether they're the small T ones or the big ones, we tell the body it's safe first. And then we allow the processing to happen. And that's why I really love these tools, because I've seen people, even in a single session, repattern a trauma that they've spent decades either suppressing or working with and not knowing how to handle. Because once the body is given that sense of safety and permission, it knows what to do. And that said, I will caution those of you who are listening and saying, I do know I have a bit of trauma in my life. You might, as we do this simple practice exercise, not pick that big trauma right away. You might decide to work with a practitioner one-on-one, provide that container of safety before you dive in on your own.